Hello, my name is Wyld, and thank you for tuning in to another book rant. Today, I'm going to be covering one of my favorites from the last few years, Kings of the Wyld. The tagline for this book is, "The boys are back in town." And it's really the kind of book it advertises on the cover. This is a book from 2017, so it's not new. It's almost a decade old now that I think about it. I bought it when it was only about 5 years old at the end of 2022, and I read it recently. I want to say late 23 or early 24. It does have a sequel, and I may cover that book as well in the next few weeks because there's a lot of thoughts that I have about it in relation to movies that have come out in the last few years. So I paid $17.99 for this at the Tattered Cover bookstore in Denver, Colorado, and in the main location for it even. So Clay Slowhand Cooper is this character with the shield. The cover illustration is by Richard Anderson, and I don't fault him for the issues with the art. There are a couple problems, I would say. The cover, I would probably feature the main hero in the story more prominently, but instead he's all the way in the back. And then the dual wielding character, the guy who uses two daggers, isn't so prominent in the story as these two characters, the one with the shield and the one with the sword in the back. This book is set in a world that is ripe for a dark fantasy setting. The humans, when the main cast were young, humans lived in fear of the shadows around the corner, that so many different small tragedies could happen that they had no control over. And this is something that they discuss in the sequel, Bloody Rose, because these characters spent their youth touring the countryside as a band of mercenaries and heroes, saving so many different towns from goblins or gnolls or giants or trolls, all sorts of traditional monsters, griffins, wyverns, dragons. These guys were fighting them. They ended up effectively living like rock stars. The word that I used, tour, is one that we think of with, a band is going on tour. Well, that's what these guys were doing too. And their band's name was Saga. So if Saga was touring in your hometown, you would be checking the bars to see where they're at. The 5 members, Ganelon the Southerner, Moog the Mage, Matrick the Sneak Thief, Gabriel Golden Gabe, who is the front man for their group. They all do their thing for, I think, 2 decades is what it implies, but they do their thing for most of their adulthood, and then they eventually retire and settle down. And when they do, Ganelon ends up in trouble by himself, turned to stone as punishment. A punishment that, it appears in this setting, being turned to stone, your mind is still awake, but your body is frozen. So for 18 years, he is stuck in a shell that he cannot escape. It is a prison. He is left in a forest of such people. So many people imprisoned for effectively eternity, going mad in their own solitary confinement, confined to their bodies. So Ganelon is trapped, and Matrick ends up marrying a princess, but she doesn't respect him and cheats on him. And one of the plot points is that none of his kids, as king, he has a lot of kids in theory, but none of them are his own. His kids prefer him to their mother, but none of them are his blood. And then Moog, the wizard, is a recluse and is constantly trying to find a cure for a form of rot that is found in the Wyld. And the Wyld is spelled Wyld, which is exactly where that like Kings of the Wyld title comes from. These 5 men are living out their retirement. Golden Gabe is the hero that everyone knows, but he doesn't retire well. He becomes an addict. He keeps on trying to bring the group back together every year. Clay Cooper, Slowhand Clay Cooper, is actually settling into retirement pretty well. He has a stable job as a town guard. He has a daughter, a wife, and his wife is constantly keeping him from those temptations that Golden Gabe brings with him. And every so often he may break it for a week to go on this journey, and of course they don't get anything done. Golden Gabe is washed up. He is past his prime. He is trying to live out his glory days. That's the bulk of their interactions for the last 18 years. But one day, Golden Gabe shows up at Clay Cooper's house and says, "Look, my daughter became an adventurer just like we were, and she has made a name for herself and then joined thousands of mercenaries in defending a city from a horde." And a horde in this case meaning like 500,000 monsters bearing down on one city. But as the news goes, the mercenaries lose. The mercenaries and the city's armies lose on the battlefield and retreat and are besieged by 500,000 monsters for months. And it's getting bad. It's getting real bad in there. So Golden Gabe is trying to bring the group back together because he wants to go save his daughter. They don't know how they're going to fight 500,000 monsters yet, but they know, all of them know, if it were my child, I would do the same. Slowhand Cooper picks up his shield, which was healed from the bark of a ent named Blackheart ages ago. And it's not magic, but it is powerful. It is a very durable shield. And that is what he is known for. He doesn't have a named weapon, but he has a named shield. And that's kind of what his role is in the story. He is trying to keep everyone alive, trying to keep everyone together. Golden Gabe, he has sold even the named weapon that he is known for because he has fallen on such hard times. They end up getting robbed like twice by the same bandit in different cities, or in the countrysides of different cities. They're going around the countryside both getting their weapons back and getting their group back, and also trying to rally humanity to the defense of this city on the far side of the Wyld. See, on the map, everything on this page is where humanity lives. And then this giant forest that covers the entire ridge there and those mountains are impassable or almost impassable. So they're trying to get from here all the way over here with just the 5 of them. And at that point, what are they going to do? But as they travel, as they get the band back together, as they free Ganelon from his imprisonment in his own body, they begin getting their feet wet. They begin getting their legs under them again to the point where they can do these amazing things. And they achieve some pretty heroic and valiant accomplishments along the way. They save Matrick from his wife, who is constantly trying to get him killed so that she can then unite with the king of another kingdom, who is actually the father of like 2 or 3 of his 5 kids. And then with, magic out of the way, she can marry the person she's been having an affair with. So Matrick is hard to kill and is a hero, so it has to look just right. But instead, Arcandius Moog, the mage, Golden Gabe, and Slowhand Cooper end up saving Matrick on their own. And then they go and save Ganelon, and then they go and cross the Heartwyld. This is a big book, about 500 pages. It covers a lot of space, but then eventually they do find a way to break the horde, the 500,000 monsters, and save his daughter. And I don't want to say, like, that's not really a spoiler. Bloody Rose picks up as a sequel about the daughter, so they do have to be saving her in this book. How they do it is something special. What is really fascinating about this is how touring has changed. And really, that's, I think, what I want to rant the most about. And I'm going to rant a lot about in Bloody Rose. In this setting, the generation of the Kings of the Wyld, Saga, the generation of Saga, this band that is known across all of humanity, they and their generation of heroes have cleared the countryside of monsters for the most part. There are still some centaurs running about. There are still goblins in the cave down the stream. But they have made the countryside safe for humanity, for pedestrians, for travelers, for farmers, to go about their lives without the fear of being killed by some random monster during the day. The hard part about this is the youth don't know what the past was like. And so they think that the older generation is too soft. What the newer bands are doing is touring from city to city, where they have these giant arenas and they fight in public for people to see. This band is going up against a Cyclops. This band is going up against 4 orcs. This band is going up against 7 gnolls. This band is going up against 8 kobolds. This band is going up against 12 goblins. They have wranglers whose entire job is to capture these monsters alive, then keep them alive, so that way the bands can defeat them in public for an audience to watch. And the youth think, and they do have some experience killing monsters through this method, but they think, oh, the older generation doesn't fight in the arenas. They're soft. They don't want to show people that they can't actually kill these monsters. When really, a lot of the older generation looks at that kind of arena fighting as juvenile or immature or not dangerous enough, that they went into the wilderness, they went into the lairs of their enemies and killed them there. And then the younger generation is soft because they have to have a wrangler go and capture people, and then they have to fight weakened enemies in an arena and call that heroism. So that's what's going on in this book. This play between the older generation and the younger generation. Everyone knows Saga. Saga is the most famous and the most successful band in all of history. So of course they're going to have doubters. They're going to have people envious of them. They're going to say, well, they're trying to do something foolish. We don't need to help them. If we let them die, we can take their place as the most heroic. But a lot of those mercenaries aren't doing things that are heroic. They're doing things that are, gladiatorial. And so near the end of the book, they're seeing this interaction where some of their friends have a flying ship. And the older generation is still touring because they're now letting their younger generation, their kids, learn the ropes and get their feet under them, so then the younger generation can tour while the older generation can retire. So the younger generation that they meet are respectful of their elders on that flying ship, at least, because they know what it's like to go into the wilderness and fight. But not every younger band of mercenaries is like that. Like I said, most of them are fighting in a 1 day walk from a town, a center of population. They're fighting in the towns, they're fighting in the arenas in the cities. So they're not fighting in the same way. And that's what is so brilliant about the end. I really, really love is that the saga, this band has to appeal to both generations and kind of anger the younger generation to say, look, we did these amazing things. You guys haven't. If you want to see the truth of our words, follow us. We're going to show you we're more badass than you because we can fight where the people aren't watching, and we will kick ass. And that's what the Kings of the Wyld do in the end, is they have to convince people to join them, and then once they join them, they perform amazing acts. And the last few chapters, the climactic battle, is just listing off the names of this band is doing this really cool thing, this band doing that, this band peppering wyverns with arrows, this guy, and it's just a highlight reel of what's going on. Unlike a more traditional fantasy battle, say Lord of the Rings, where you are being described how the different Eoreds are going about and doing their thing. An Eored is like a company, it's 120 horsemen. And so that's entirely different than what these guys are doing, where in Lord of the Rings, yeah, you do see Éowyn take on the Witch King with Meriadoc helping her. You do see those champions battle, but not as often as you get descriptions of the battlefield itself. And this skips that kind of battlefield description to say, this is what all these different duels across the battlefield are doing. There are 1,000 mercenary companies, almost 10,000 mercenary companies on this field. 60,000 people. Most companies have 5 or 6 people and then a bard to write down what they did. And so 60,000 warriors, there are almost 10,000 different highlight reels to highlight. And of course he only goes over about 100, maybe. But it's still fascinating the different names this author comes up with, the different fights that go on. That climactic battle is one of the most rock and roll fantasy kinds of things I've ever seen. And I really love this book because it opened me up to a new type of fantasy. I spent $18 on it, and I think you should spend $18 on it. You will be happy with what you purchase. If you find it used and pay less, you know? But regardless of what you pay, you're going to be satisfied. I've reread this a couple times. I sometimes just read the last 50 pages because they're just that fun, that invigorating. So yeah, I have had a really good time reading this. So yeah, my name is Wyld Stag, and thank you for tuning in to another book rant.